Hannah huffed, throwing herself onto the couch while staring at the white ceiling of her apartment. At 30, a successful architect, independent and owner of her apartment in the upscale neighborhood of the city, she had everything she wanted, except peace when it came to her love life. Daughter, just one more guy. He's the son of Kelly, do you remember her? He's a lawyer, has his own office, quite a catch. Her mother's voice, Helena, echoed through the speakerphone of the cell phone. Mum, we've talked about this. Do you remember the last quite a catch you introduced me to? Hannah closed her eyes, recalling the disaster of 2 months ago. Ed, the son of your mother's best friend, owned a medium-sized construction company. Hannah had made an effort to be presentable that night, wearing an elegant black dress and high heels. She arrived at the restaurant punctually, only to find Eduardo checking his watch every 5 minutes and looking at his reflection in the cutlery. Sorry for asking, he said after the first course, but aren't you afraid that architecture might be replaced by artificial intelligence? I mean, it's so manual. The dinner got worse when he spilled wine on his shirt and demanded that the waiter provide him with a miracle solution, blaming the establishment for his own clumsiness. When the bill arrived, Ed forgot his wallet. And this wasn't even the worst. There was also the date with Philip, the son of another friend of her mother's, a doctor who wouldn't stop talking about his material possessions. He spent the entire dinner bragging about his collection of imported watches and his new car. Do you know how much one of these Rolex watches costs? He asked, showing his wrist for the 3rd time. More than many people earn in a year. The climax of the evening was when he suggested that Hannah give up her hobby of designing buildings and consider something more feminine, like interior decorating. She ended the date before dessert. Daughter, I know the others weren't ideal, but this one is different, Helena insisted. Please, just this once. It's my birthday next month. Consider it as an early present. Hannah sighed deeply. Helena knew how to be persuasive, especially when she mentioned her birthday. After 10 more minutes of insistence and a hint of maternal drama, Hannah gave in. All right, Mum, but this is the last one, got it? The last one. Sliding her finger across the screen to end the call, Hannah smiled to herself. She had a plan. On the night of the date, Hannah did the opposite of her usual routine. Instead of carefully choosing an elegant outfit, she rummaged through the back of her closet, finding a pair of faded jeans with a small rip at the knee. She paired it with a loose t-shirt emblazoned with a ridiculous slogan and completed the look with worn-out sneakers. Her hair, usually neatly combed, was tied up in a messy ponytail. The makeup was almost non-existent, except for a poorly applied red lipstick on purpose. Looking at herself in the mirror, Hannah laughed. Perfect. Let's see how long this Josh guy can last. She arrived at the restaurant a few minutes before the scheduled time. The place was sophisticated, with soft lighting and minimalist decor, typical for a date arranged by the upper class. While waiting, she mentally rehearsed the stories she would tell. One about her supposed collection of stuffed insects, another about her hobby of collecting aluminum cans on the streets. Good evening. You must be Hannah. She looked up, prepared to see a man buttoned up in a perfect suit. Instead, she found someone almost as sloppy as she was. Josh was wearing a wrinkled t-shirt under an old denim jacket, pants that seemed not to have seen an iron in weeks, and dirty sneakers. His brown hair was completely messy, as if he had just gotten out of bed. Josh, she asked, genuinely surprised. The one and only, he replied with a half smile, sitting down. So, you're the famous daughter of my mum's friend. During the first course, Hannah followed her plan. She spoke too loudly, gestured exaggeratedly, and mentioned her non-existent insect collection. You need to see my beetles, she said between exaggerated bites. I have more than 200 specimens preserved in small boxes around my bed. Josh didn't seem bothered. In fact, he also had peculiar stories to share. Fascinating, he replied. I myself have an interesting hobby. I collect empty fast food boxes. I have an entire wall of my room dedicated to it. The smell doesn't even bother me after a while. Throughout dinner, a strange competition arose between them. Each absurd story was met with an even more bizarre one. Josh told about his supposed job as a skunk hunter, and Hannah retorted by describing a yoga ritual she practiced, involving staying upside down for hours. As she unravelled yet another story about how she meditated in the bathroom to connect with her inner energy, Hannah noticed something strange. Despite both their eccentric behaviours, she was having fun. There was something about the way Josh smiled, a spark of intelligence in his brown eyes that intrigued her. When the waiter brought the dessert, Hannah reached her limit. She looked at Josh, who was using a napkin on his hair as if he were cleaning his ears, and couldn't take it anymore. "Josh, let's be honest," she said, putting down the fork. "Neither of us wants to be on this date, and certainly we're not as weird as we're trying to appear. I think we can stop pretending, shake hands, and tell our mothers that we just don't match." There was a moment of tense silence between them. Josh stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, a genuine smile spread across his face, followed by a laugh that started low and turned into a contagious guffaw. Soon they were both laughing so hard that the other restaurant patrons turned to look. "How did you guess?" he asked, wiping away a tear of laughter. "No one collects fast food boxes," she replied. "And I noticed your watch is a Patek Philippe, a bit contradictory for a supposed skunk hunter." Josh ran his hand through his messy hair, slightly putting it in place. "And no one meditates while using the bathroom. Besides, your nails are perfectly manicured for someone who supposedly spends their free time hunting bugs in the park." Both admitted to their strategies. Josh confessed that his mother had persuaded him to attend, promising to stop trying to arrange dates if he gave this friend's daughter a chance. "I thought the best way to ensure there wouldn't be a second date was to seem completely crazy," he explained. "Exactly what I thought," agreed Hannah. The rest of the dinner proceeded in a surprisingly pleasant manner. Without characters to play, they discovered that they had several things in common. Josh was not a lawyer, as his mother had said, but a civil engineer specializing in structures. His work perfectly complemented Hannah's background in architecture. When they finished the meal, Josh insisted on paying the bill, a gesture she accepted without the usual discomfort she felt in similar situations. "Well, at least let me walk you home," he offered as they left the restaurant. The night was pleasant, with a gentle breeze and a starry sky. They decided to walk, as Hannah's apartment wasn't far away. During the walk, they talked about their jobs, favourite movies, and travel experiences. Josh talked about a project he was working on to revitalise a historical area of the city, and Hannah shared her dream of one day designing more inclusive public spaces. "Do you know what's the funniest thing?" Josh commented as they approached Hannah's building. "If we had been ourselves from the beginning, maybe this date would have been really good." "Maybe," Hannah agreed, feeling a pang of regret. They stopped in front of the building, a moment of hesitation hanging between them. Finally, they extended their hands at the same time, laughing at the synchronization. "It was a pleasure to meet the real Hannah," Josh said, holding her hand a little longer than necessary. "Likewise, the real Josh." They said goodbye, and Hannah entered the building with an unexpected feeling of lightness. Upon arriving at her apartment, she realized she had completely forgotten to check the messages on her cell phone, something she would usually do compulsively during bad dates to create excuses to leave early. In the days that followed, Hannah found herself thinking about the date more often than she cared to admit. Small details returned to her mind. The way Josh threw his head back when he genuinely laughed, how he listened attentively when she spoke, without interrupting. She almost called him a few times. After all, they had exchanged numbers out of politeness. But she always backed out at the last moment. What would she say? "Hey, remember that horrible date they set up for us? How about we try again, this time without the crazy characters?" Before she could make a decision, the weekend of her mother's birthday arrived. Helena had organised a grand celebration in an elegant banquet hall. The creme de la creme of the local society would be present, and Hannah knew she needed to look impeccable, not due to social pressure, but because she genuinely wanted her mother to have a special day. She chose a navy blue dress that accentuated her eyes, styled her hair in soft waves, and applied discreet yet elegant makeup. When she arrived at the party, she was immediately engulfed in greetings and conversations with the guests, many of whom she had known since childhood. She was helping herself to a glass of champagne when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "There's the girl who collects stuffed insects." Hannah turned around, nearly spilling her drink. Josh was there, visibly different from the untidy man from the restaurant. He was wearing a well-tailored suit that accentuated his broad shoulders, and his hair was styled, revealing facial features she hadn't properly noticed before. Expressive eyes, a defined jawline, and a smile that created small dimples. "What do we have here?" "The famous and talented skunk hunter," she replied playfully, feeling warmth rising up her neck. The two burst into laughter, attracting curious glances. The orchestra began to play, and Josh extended his hand. "Would you like to dance? I promise not to step on your feet." Hannah accepted, laughing. On the dance floor, she discovered that Josh moved with surprising grace for someone who had portrayed such an awkward character. "You know," he said as they twirled, "I've been thinking about you this week." "Really? I hope it wasn't about my fake insect collection." "In fact, I was thinking about how funny fate is. We make elaborate plans to avoid something, only to discover it was exactly what we needed." The music changed to a slow ballad, and Josh gently placed his hand on Hannah's waist, pulling her closer. She felt an electric current run down her spine. "So what would you say," he continued, "if I invited you to a second date? This time without characters, without insistent mothers, just the two of us being who we really are." Hannah felt her heart race. For a brief moment, all her defenses, built after years of disastrous dates, seemed to crumble. "I would say," she paused, smiling, "that you just found the only way to make me say yes to a blind date." The party continued around them, but for Hannah and Josh, the world seemed to have shrunk to that shared moment. Between dances and conversations, they discovered more coincidences in their lives. They had attended the same university with only 2 years of difference, and they had mutual friends who never thought of introducing them. At the end of the night, as the guests began to say their goodbyes, Helena approached them, her face lit up with a satisfied smile. "I see that you got along well," she commented, exchanging a knowing glance with Kelly, who joined them. "Mom," Hannah began reproachfully, "you and Kelly planned this, didn't you?" "Planned what, dear?" Helena replied with feigned innocence. "We just suggested a dinner between 2 young, single and successful people. The rest was up to you." Josh and Hannah exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Perhaps their mothers were right after all. Weeks later, when Josh took her for a picnic by the lakeside, Hannah couldn't help but think about how an attempt to sabotage a meeting had turned into the beginning of something unexpectedly wonderful. And when he kissed her for the first time at sunset, she knew that some stories begin exactly where we least expect them. Sometimes, you need to be willing to appear a bit crazy to find someone who accepts us exactly as we are. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.